Avi Meyer's Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine, a presentation of Sonny Hirsch and myself. Dial us up on the web at www.ntnm.org. You'll see the schedule for the upcoming shows. We air in Chicago, all of Chicago, in 35 or a little more north and northwest suburbs. Evanston will work out one of these years. We're there, we just don't know when. And everything's on YouTube, though. So, and you can catch things on YouTube before they even air on TV. And if you go to the website, you'll see over 250,000 shows watched. Thank you very much. We're real big on community policing, caps24.org. And we're glad to see their expanding efforts in the 2410 sector, which is West Rogers Park, which is where Sonny and I cheer 2 of the 3 beats in that area. And, you know, whether you live in West Rogers Park or wherever you live in the city, or actually wherever you live in the suburbs, if you see something and you got to tell the police, you just got to. I mean, not if your mother-in-law jaywalks, don't do that. But, you know, it's like, they're not going to know if you don't tell them. There's only so many of them. So it would be very helpful. It is a pleasure to, you know, I get so many of my guests from Facebook, it's not even funny, over the years. And I've started relationships through it. You have no idea. And in any event, it is a pleasure to introduce you to, I asked for help, I need a guest. And he got recommended. And we're talking about Mark Glennon. Mark, how you doing?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
Real good. Why don't you tell, okay, I don't even know that much about you. I know some about you. I know you're highly respected and by people I respect. So tell us about who you are and what you do.
Thanks. My current occupation, preoccupation, kind of obsession is a website I run that's focused on our fiscal problems here in Illinois, state and local fiscal problems. So at wirepoints.com, we do have them, and it's really, we focus on the intersection between the economy and the government. So every major headline that really has an impact on Illinois' economy, we link to. So it's third-party content like that, updated several times a day.
Those are some of the most popular sites on the web.
They are, yeah, and we've rapidly growing. The traffic doubled actually this month.
Nice.
And and original content. I write my own stuff, and I'm a thorough student of the pension and fiscal problems we all have.
So we're so are we 49th or 50th in terms of pension?
We might be 49th. New Jersey just edged us out. So
really?
Yeah, somebody suggested our new license plate slogan should be not as bad as New Jersey.
Well, actually, I like the license plate slogan, our governors make license plates. But
yeah.
You know, that's another story. So you take stories from all over the country, I would imagine.
We're actually in the process of expanding to include other states, but for now, it is stories from all over the country, but focused on
about
Illinois.
Illinois, because
Illinois, that's right.
You know, you'll see the Wall Street Journal, or you'll see the Los Angeles Times, or you'll see even the New York the New York Times, or the Washington Post write stories about the pension problems in Illinois.
Exactly right, and in fact, that's really part of the impetus behind the site, because I think that part of our problem is that our local media haven't covered the problems very well.
Not even close.
Right, and so some of the best articles come from the bond buyer, for example, is very good, rather technical, but you're right, occasionally stories pop up in the Wall Street Journal and elsewhere, and we get all those stories and put them online every day.
And the fact is, you know, for instance, when a lot of times if I really want an honest opinion, if I'm watching a ball game, because most of you can relate to ball games, almost everybody can. Okay, you know what? There are times I'd rather hear the ESPN or the TNT guys rather than hear my local announcers. And if I've got that option, because sometimes, you know, you can watch multiple things, or if you know what you're doing on the web, you can even get all the away games and all that. The fact is, when I hear an objective person from who doesn't have a rooting interest talk about something, I tend to think I'm getting a more honest opinion than when I see somebody local who can easily be rubbed the wrong way or be influenced over the years by factors that get in the equation.
And they're beholden to their sources, so they really do have a bias. And I would hope everybody agrees that most journalism has broken down into advocacy, both on the left and the right.
Almost all of it.
So, to really get an objective viewpoint, unfortunately, now you almost have to read two stories on the same subject.
Well, actually, I don't think two is enough, and I
That's
do.
right.
The truth is, I live my life on Real Clear Politics these days.
That's the model. That's the best of them. They collect.
They're
That's right.
located here.
They are, and they've done very well. It's really good to see them thriving.
No, I agree. And, in the old, I'll tell you, even in, when I was in high school, I always knew that journalism was something I liked. I used to get all 4 daily papers. We'd get the daily news delivered at home. At those times, there were separate editions. So at different times of day, there was a newsstand. Remember newsstands? I used to love newsstands. About a block from the house. So early in the morning, daily news was delivered in the afternoon. I make it the Tribune in the morning. I'd get the American later, Chicago Today in the afternoon. And I'd get the Sun-Times evening edition later that night. That wouldn't have the West Coast scores, but, it would at least have something. So I would read 4 stories and get separate accounts of events. I'd actually go to an event in person when I started being a reporter, and I'd cover it. This meant I actually worked for the 5th daily paper, the Daily Defender. I was a token white guy for a short time. And I would hear the other reporters. In those days, you had to run to the payphone and phone in your story to beat the press deadline. I would hear them call in their stories, and I was wondering where they were because it wasn't the same location I was at. It was absolutely unbelievable. So, yeah, you've got to read more than one version to piece together the whole picture.
I like your analogy to a newsstand. That's essentially what we try to be, is a newsstand on governmental and economic topics for Illinois, with all sources there to look at.
No, I think that's definitely a real good thing. And, the more information, the merrier, especially when it's objective. Because, like when it comes to political stories, I know what viewpoint I'm getting when I read most of the people in the New York Times. Okay, and I'm not getting objective journalism, even in the news stories. I am getting, people that are trying to point things that way. For the people that complain about Breitbart, and Joel Pollak's a good friend who appears on the show, at least they tell you where they're coming from. At least they'll give them credit for honesty that way.
Right.
You have no doubt in your mind where they're coming from and where those stories are going to be.
Exactly.
So at least I give them credit for that. But that still doesn't mean I'm going to take that without a grain of, if I read The Nation with Catherine Vanderhoodlem, I'm getting entirely, I'm getting a fairy world that I didn't even know existed. Because even for the lefties, they're really a bit too far out.
You recognize it, but a lot of people still regard the New York Times as the paper of record, and it's unfortunate. So.
Well, actually, I'm starting to see more and more people call the Washington Post the paper of record, and I do subscribe to the Washington Post. I stopped subscribing to the New York Times, and the fact is that even though they might have something of a left bias, they make more of an effort to be fair, although this Trump thing is very troubling, given that Trump, declared war on them. But where else am I going to read people like Charles Krauthammer and George Will?
That's right.
Not to mention Jennifer Rubin in it, and other really exceptional conservative columnists besides for, the more liberal types. So, they'll give you balance along those lines, and I appreciate that. Yeah. You were originally going to come out here and talk about New Trier, so in our remaining time, what is it about New Trier we're going to talk about?
That's popped up recently, and it's a strange thing. I really haven't seen this kind of personal strife in a community among people who are otherwise friends as it popped up because of a day that they've set aside, mandatory attendance for the students at New Trier High School, focused on race. And that was probably a bad decision in itself. They apparently are oblivious to the reality that identity politics has divided the nation, but they brought it down to the high school level now.
And even families.
And that's right. Just like Vietnam, I am old enough to remember that. But to make it worse, they chose a very, very one-sided collection of speakers. It's the most far left collection of opinions that you could find. So a lot of parents have objected to it as being unbalanced, not educational, really just propagandizing, which I think it is. And so the school is being pressured now to either drop the program or at least make it non-mandatory for students to attend, or put some balance in the program.
Yeah, or you know what? Why not have one from the other side of life?
It would be easy to put that together, and they paid a lot of money to bring in some of these
Yeah,
speakers.
let them bring in the lefties and then have one for the righties.
I'm glad to have my son exposed to the left-wing stuff, but I'd like to see him get some balance.
No, that would be very nice. And unfortunately, in the educational community, more so in college. Matter of fact, one of our people later on is he's going to talk, Steve Resnikoff, who's going to be on next week's show, or might have been on the week before. Check the website. He's going to talk about it from a college standpoint, as a matter of fact, in one of the interviews we're conducting today. At this point, though, Mickey's hands are about out. We're running out of time. I want to thank Mark Glennon, Wirepoints.com.
Wirepoints.com, thank you, yes.
Okay, and he tries to put together an overall scene of the Illinois finances and what's doing and what's going on with them. And I checked it out a little bit. It is interesting, and that's the kind of website, where you can pick and choose articles, but more so you can get your views from different places on the same subject and be able to better analyze and understand what's going on. Thank you very much, Mark, and
My pleasure.
good luck.
Thank you.